France arrives at 2026 with one of the deepest talent pools in world football, and Didier Deschamps' choices will decide whether that depth becomes a trophy. In the next few minutes you'll get 3 realistic pathways he can take: maintain a stable, experienced spine, shift toward a high-energy, youth-driven press, or run a controlled hybrid that mixes veterans and rotation, and will weigh the tactical trade-offs behind each. Sticking with experience preserves cohesion and lowers short-term risk but can sap legs and become predictable. A youth-fueled press adds pace and surprise but brings defensive gaps and in-game learning curves. The hybrid manages fitness and tactical flexibility but demands flawless rotation and clear role definitions. Based on Deschamps' past pattern of pragmatic, risk-aware decisions, the likeliest approach is that controlled hybrid, nudging intensity up while protecting structure, but small choices on selection and in-game adjustments will still swing outcomes dramatically. Watch on to see concrete player matchups, the pressing triggers and formation switches that matter most, and the exact decisions that could turn France's talent advantage into World Cup victory. France national team achievements. The French national side sits among the sport's elite with multiple major tournament titles and repeated deep runs in finals. It has captured the highest prize in world football twice and also secured the European Championship on multiple occasions, while appearing in several other finals. Those results reflect both a high peak performance level and remarkable consistency on the biggest stages. The team has produced a galaxy of world-class players whose individual excellence has led to collective success. France's talent pipeline is supported by nationally recognized academies such as Clairefontaine, and a domestic league structure that regularly supplies top-tier prospects to elite clubs across Europe. Recent tournament outcomes demonstrate the effectiveness of a pragmatic, results-oriented approach that balances defensive organization with explosive attacking transitions. Under that model, France has combined robust defensive units with quick, clinical attackers up front, yielding efficient goal returns without dominating possession in every match. This tactical balance has yielded both trophies and finals appearances, and has allowed managers and staff to exploit squad depth, rotating veterans for rest while blooding younger talents at key moments. The achievement here is not only in trophies but in sustaining a competitive window through smart selection, sports science, and man management. Comparing pathways to further achievements highlights clear trade-offs. One route emphasizes accelerating youth integration. Fast-tracking the best academy graduates into the senior setup increases squad energy and future payoff, but can introduce inconsistency and greater tactical naivety against world-class opposition. The alternative prioritizes veteran stability and continuity, which typically produces reliable short-term results and leadership on the pitch, yet risks reduced long-term dynamism and potential physical decline. For example, keeping a seasoned striker to anchor play gives immediate finishing assurance, while promoting a younger, faster forward changes the team's transition profile and can alter defensive responsibilities across the fullback and midfield lines. Beyond trophies, achievements include sustained world-class player production and a reputation for tactical flexibility. Strong qualifying records and competitive performances across tournaments show institutional depth, and the national team's ability to draw from varied club environments, from those prioritizing youth to clubs focused on high-intensity pressing, creates selectable options for different game plans. The practical balance going forward will be choosing when to prioritize immediate silverware versus investing minutes in emerging talent. Both approaches have proven value, and the optimal path likely lies in a hybrid that preserves cohesion while incrementally renewing the squad. World Cup winner, 1998-2018. Didier Deschamps has the rare perspective of having lifted football's biggest trophy both from the midfield as a captain and later from the touchline as head coach, 1998 and 2018. That dual experience gives him concrete knowledge of the tournament's physical and psychological tempo, how to pace a squad through group fixtures, when to conserve energy, and how to structure training loads to peak in knockout rounds. He knows what a dressing room needs after a narrow win and what coaching staff must prioritize when a key player returns from a minor knock, practical insights rather than abstract theory. His decision-making often reflects that layered insight, and comparing two broad approaches clarifies the trade-offs. One approach prioritizes continuity, keep a settled spine of experienced winners in the starting 11 to maximize cohesion and minimize in-game misunderstanding. This reduces tactical risk and fosters calm leadership on the field, but it can slow the integration of younger talents and risk fatigue across a long tournament. The alternative stresses rotation and youth injection, Fresh legs and unpredictability can exploit tired opponents and create tactical flexibility, but over-rotation can fracture on-field relationships and increase the chance of costly mistakes under pressure. Deschamps' history suggests he balances these extremes, using veterans to anchor the team while introducing young players in phases tied to fitness data and opponent profiles. Tactical trade-offs also follow from his winning pedigree. Emphasizing defensive solidity and structure lowers the variance of match outcomes, teams concede fewer soft goals and are better able to control knockout matches. But that conservatism can limit offensive creativity and leave the team vulnerable when opponents sit deep. Conversely, a more attack-minded setup increases scoring opportunities but demands higher defensive work rate and can expose gaps on transition. Practical examples show how he might adjust. Against physical, direct sides he'll favor compact midfield blocks and rapid counters, versus possession-based opponents he'll press in coordinated waves to disrupt rhythm. Each choice requires balancing training emphasis, substitution planning, and player selection, trade-offs that his personal experience helps him weigh with credibility. Leadership style is another concrete area shaped by having been a winner on both sides of the touchline. As a former captain, he understands how to delegate authority within the squad, naming on-field leaders, assigning roles for crisis moments, and managing personalities so that responsibility is distributed rather than centralized. From a managerial standpoint, he must decide between hands-on micromanagement and empowering senior players to make tactical calls under stress. The former can ensure tactical purity but risks stifling player initiative. The latter fosters resilience but requires veterans who can read matches and act decisively. His prior World Cup victories supply real examples for both coaching conversations and matchday choices, allowing him to present experimental evidence when evaluating strategies and when negotiating the inevitable trade-offs between discipline and creativity. World Cup silver medalist, 2006, 2022. France finished as World Cup runners-up in two high-profile finals, losing on penalties after a 1-1 draw with Italy and then again following a 3-3 draw with Argentina. Each match offered distinct tactical and psychological lessons. The Italy game was low-scoring and defined by defensive organization and set-piece play, while the Argentina match swung wildly with momentum shifts, a late comeback and a hat-trick from Kylian Mbappé that included two penalties. Both endings were decided from the spot, but the pathways to those shootouts were markedly different, highlighting separate vulnerabilities and strengths. Tactically, the 1-1 final emphasized compact structure and control of transitions. The Italian approach limited space and punished errors from set pieces and aerial duels. In contrast, the 3-3 final exposed issues in game management under pressure, with defensive lapses on quick counters and difficulties closing out a match once momentum turned. Comparing the two shows a trade-off that managers constantly face: prioritize an organized, risk-averse block that reduces conceded chances but may blunt attacking upside, or allow more freedom going forward at the cost of leaving gaps to be exploited. Both approaches require specific preparatory choices, set-piece drills and marking patterns for the former, and counter-pressing and recovery shape for the latter. Discipline and leadership were decisive non-tactical factors. One final was overshadowed by a moment of indiscipline that forced a team to finish reduced and reshaped the psychological landscape on the pitch. The other underlined resilience and individual brilliance but also exposed over-reliance on a single match winner to salvage the result. These contrasts create clear trade-offs in squad construction, selecting experienced, composed leaders who steady the dressing room versus prioritizing explosive, match-winning talent who can change a game single-handedly. A balanced mix helps mitigate the risk that comes from either extreme. Practical takeaways for preparation are concrete. Allocate training time to penalty simulation under fatigue and stress, designate a clear order of takers and practice those scenarios in small-sided drills. Invest in set-piece defense routines and dedicate sessions to defending second balls and managing moments immediately after scoring or conceding. Rotate players to preserve sharpness without losing cohesion, and rehearse late-game plans: what to do when defending a lead, how to chase a deficit, and which substitution patterns change tempo. Finally, reinforce disciplinary expectations through clear consequences and leadership roles so that individual moments do not determine team fate. Comparative evaluation favors neither final as a template in isolation. The defensively compact blueprint reduces variance but can struggle against teams that patiently break lines, the open, attack-first blueprint can overwhelm opponents yet is vulnerable to counterattacks and late-game swings. Learning from both runner-up outcomes means combining disciplined structure with contingency plans for momentum shifts, sharpening set-piece and penalty preparedness, and building a leadership group that enforces composure when the stakes are highest. World Cup bronze medalist, 1958, 1986. France has reached the World Cup podium twice, finishing third on both occasions, and those campaigns offer contrasting blueprints for building a competitive side. One campaign was defined by an extraordinary individual scoring output. An attacker set a single tournament record for goals, dragging the team forward with relentless finishing. The other relied more on a compact, creative midfield nucleus that controlled tempo, connected lines, and produced scoring chances through collective movement rather than one hot streak. The 1958 run shows the clear upside of having a prolific striker who can convert half chances and punish defensive errors. The team's results were amplified by that player's finishing instincts. That reliance yielded immediate reward in goal returns, but it also introduced a fragility. Opponents could focus on shutting the channel to the main threat, and any dip in that player's form or availability had outsized consequences. When assembling a roster, the trade-off is stark: build around a finishing phenom and risk predictability, or distribute goal-scoring responsibility and accept a potentially lower ceiling in individual match output. By contrast, the later third-place performance leaned on a midfield quartet known for technical control and passing range. That structure provided multiple pathways to create and recover possession, making the team less dependent on one figure and more resilient under pressure. The trade-offs here include the need for a higher collective tactical IQ and deeper rotation options. Such systems demand time to gel and are vulnerable if several midfield creators are unavailable simultaneously. The payoff is usually greater adaptability during games and a reduced reliance on moments of individual brilliance. Comparing the two scenarios logically highlights several practical lessons. First, balance matters. Pairing a reliable goalscorer with creative midfielders mitigates single-point failure without diluting attacking potency. Second, squad depth and specialized backups are non-negotiable if a manager wants to preserve the advantages of either approach. For example, when a team leans on a star forward, investing in two complementary strikers and an attacking midfielder who can score becomes a sensible hedge. Conversely, a midfield-heavy model requires versatile defensive midfielders who can shield transitions and offensive fullbacks who provide width. Finally, the psychological and tactical implications must be weighed. A team built around a standout scorer can gain confidence quickly, which is valuable in knockout football, while a cohesive midfield culture fosters sustained control and often better game management. Both routes achieve podium finishes for France. The practical takeaway is to evaluate opponent profiles, injury risks, and squad composition before committing to one template. Each choice brings measurable benefits and known vulnerabilities, and blending elements of both, goal-scoring reliability plus midfield cohesion, is the most resilient strategy supported by those historical precedents. France national team strategy and tactics for the 2026 World Cup. France's squad depth gives a clear foundation for a flexible tactical approach: multiple forwards with pace and finishing ability, midfielders able to press and progress the ball, and centre-backs comfortable carrying the ball out from the back. That mix supports a system that can oscillate between possession dominance and explosive counterattacks without wholesale personnel changes. Practical formations would center on a hybrid 4-3-3, 4-2-3-1 structure, allowing full-backs to supply width while central midfielders either compress space or create long vertical passes. Defensive organization must be adaptive. Against teams that build slowly from the back, a medium block with coordinated pressing triggers, loss of possession in wide zones, poor back pass to the goalkeeper, lets France force rushed long balls while preserving energy. Conversely, facing heavy pressers requires dropping a pivot between centre-backs to create numerical superiority and bypass the press with diagonals into the half spaces. The trade-off is clear: a high-intensity press can win possession higher but risks leaving space behind the backline, while a conservative low block reduces that risk but invites sustained possession from opponents and increases the need for efficient counter-attacks. Transition play will likely be the central attacking identity. Quick, vertical switches from regain to goal, aimed at exploiting the pace of wide forwards, create high-value chances. One midfielder acting as a progressive carrier and another shielding the defense offers balance, it permits late arriving midfield runs into the box while keeping a screen for opposition counters. Compared to a single pivot possession model, this double role approach trades a bit of sustained control for faster penetration and clearer roles in pressing phases. Tactical responses to specific opponent types should be rehearsed and crisp. Against compact, low-block teams, the plan should emphasize overloads on the flank and repeated changes of point of attack, with full-backs alternating between high overlaps and underlapping runs to drag centre-backs out of position. Versus teams that press aggressively, the priority is to create central passing lanes, goalkeeper to centre-back to pivot, and use long diagonals to switch play quickly. If up against physically dominant, aerially strong opponents, France should favour ground-based combinations, fast cutbacks, and late runs rather than high crosses into crowded boxes. Set pieces and game management are decisive in knockout football. Mixing zonal and man marking, varying delivery types, and assigning rehearsed blocking movements increase unpredictability. Substitution patterns ought to be planned by scenario, introduce a direct outlet and fresh legs to counter a tiring low block, or bring on a press-resistant midfielder when protecting a lead. Each choice has trade-offs between immediate tactical impact and potential disruption to team cohesion, so timing must reflect match context and player condition. Finally, squad rotation through the tournament balances freshness with understanding. Rotating one or two positions in group games preserves energy while keeping a core tactical identity intact. The logical comparison between maintaining the same 11 for cohesion versus rotating to avoid fatigue leans toward a measured rotation. It reduces injury risk and preserves intensity for decisive knockout matches, but it must be limited so players retain rhythm and positional clarity. Formation options: 4-2-3-1, 4-3-3. France possesses a deep pool of players who naturally fit into both a 4-2-3-1 and a 4-3-3 shape, with world-class forwards, versatile midfielders and full-backs capable of providing width. Kylian Mbappé functions effectively as an outlet either through the middle or from the left flank. Aurélien Tchouameni is a recognized defensive midfielder who excels in screening the back four and recovering possession. Eduardo Camavinga and Adrien Rabiot offer different profiles for central midfield roles, combining ball progression and physicality. These personnel realities make both systems viable tactically without major personnel overhauls. The 4-2-3-1 prioritizes a double pivot to protect the defense while freeing a number 10 to exploit the pockets between midfield and defense. It allows a specialist creator, someone with Griezmann's spatial intelligence, to receive between the lines and link play to Mbappé up front or wide attackers cutting in. Full-backs can push higher because the two holding midfielders cover the channels, which is useful against teams that overload the flanks. The trade-off is that the lone striker can become isolated against aggressive centre-backs unless the wide attacking midfielders consistently tuck inside to create passing angles. By contrast, the 4-3-3 offers stronger central control through a midfield triangle, whether that takes the shape of a single pivot with two shuttling midfielders or a flat three rotating to dominate phases of play. It helps France win and retain possession higher up the pitch, making it easier to sustain pressure and create overloads in wide areas for inverted wingers. It can also improve transitions because one midfielder is always available to step into midfield possession while another supports the forwards. The drawback is defensive vulnerability in the wide defensive channels. Full-backs must choose carefully when to overlap because one less dedicated shield increases exposure to counter-attacks. Comparing both setups for practical match management shows clear trade-offs that guide selection. Choose 4-2-3-1 when the aim is to remain compact centrally and counter through a creative number 10 and a mobile striker. It is better versus opponents who press high but leave space in transition. Opt for 4-3-3 when controlling tempo matters and when France can deploy two energetic midfielders to shuttle and a disciplined pivot to anchor the block. This works well against teams that cede possession and invite progressive build-up. Flexibility is key. During matches, switching between the two can be achieved by moving one holding midfielder into a deeper single pivot and pushing the attacking midfielder wider, or by having one of the three in a 4-3-3 step up into the no-point 10 zone to create a temporary 4-2-3-1. Tactical specifics and examples make the choices actionable. In a 4-2-3-1, assign the quicker, more aggressive midfielder to press the opponent's deep-lying playmaker while the other sits to cut passing lanes. Ask the number 10 to rotate into left half spaces to combine with Mbappé and drag a centre-back out of position. In a 4-3-3, designate one midfielder as the security valve, the pivot who drops between centre-backs for progressive passes, and have the other two interchange to overload one side and open diagonal passing lines. Substitutions should reflect the shape, introduce a fresh defensive-minded option to preserve a 4-2-3-1 lead, or a dynamic box-to-box player to regain control in a stuttering 4-3-3. Both formations demand targeted training, emphasis on pressing triggers, positional discipline and set-piece roles. Practice the micro-moments, how the double pivot shifts when full-backs ascend, or how the midfield trio compresses laterally to deny vertical passes. Short, sharp drills on transition and half-space movement build the instincts players need to execute either system under pressure. The final decision should balance opponent profile, player fitness, and match context. There is no universally superior option, only the better one for the tactical objectives of a given game. Optimal structure. An elite national team requires an integrated structure that links coaching, scouting, sports science, analytics and administration into a single decision-making stream. Core matchday staff normally includes the head coach, 1 or 2 assistant coaches, a goalkeeping coach, a fitness coach and a video analysis specialist. That configuration allows clear on-pitch instruction while keeping opposition scouting and load management tightly coordinated. Centralized databases for player information, including recent club minutes, injury history and GPS load profiles, become indispensable for quick, evidence-based selection decisions. Coordination with club medical teams and a designated federation club liaison reduces misunderstandings about player fitness and availability. At the tactical level, an optimal setup gives the head coach final authority but delegates defined responsibilities. One assistant focuses on defensive organization and set-piece defense, another on attacking transitions and set-piece delivery, while the analyst prepares opponent dossiers with clip-based recommendations. That division speeds pre-match preparation and ensures players receive consistent, reinforced messages. Compare 2 scenarios, a highly centralized model where the head coach micromanages tactics versus a distributed model where assistants lead subunits. Centralization guarantees coherence in philosophy but risks bottlenecks and burnout. Distribution increases adaptability and player-specific coaching but requires strong internal communication to avoid mixed messages. Managing the squad requires a balance between a stable core and planned rotation. Maintaining a nucleus of players who understand systems improves cohesion in high-pressure matches, yet predictable lineups increase fatigue and injury risk. One practical compromise is to anchor the spine, goalkeeper, central defenders and a primary midfielder, while rotating wide attackers and full-backs based on form and opponent profiles. This approach preserves defensive understanding while exploiting fresh legs and tactical mismatches. When evaluating trade-offs, prioritize match importance, recent workload, and tactical fit rather than defaulting to name recognition. Youth integration and succession planning need formal links between senior and youth coaching groups. Regular joint sessions, shared tactical frameworks across age groups, and clear promotion criteria facilitate seamless transitions. For instance, maintaining a common pressing pattern or build-up sequence across U21 and senior teams means a promoted player requires fewer tactical adjustments. Conversely, treating youth development as separate risks late adaptation issues and tactical friction. The federation should also invest in a small travel-ready core of multi-role players. Versatility reduces the need for mid-tournament tactical overhauls. Sports science and recovery protocols must be embedded into daily operations rather than treated as optional add-ons. Use of GPS, heart rate monitoring, and standardized recovery windows informs rotation choices without disclosing player-specific metrics publicly. In practice, this means aligning training intensities in the microcycle to match upcoming opposition and monitoring spikes in workload that correlate with injury risk. There is a trade-off here. Pushing intensity yields sharper match fitness but increases short-term injury probability. A pragmatic rule is to accept slightly reduced intensity in the lead-up to knockout fixtures to preserve player availability. Finally, communication and contingency planning underpin the whole structure. Clear chains of command, predefined substitution philosophies and rehearsed adjustments for red cards or early injuries reduce decision time under pressure. Regular scenario-based rehearsals, for example, practicing play from a 2-man midfield or operating without a target striker, ensure tactical flexibility. Centralized scouting reports combined with adaptive coaching workflows create a robust environment. decisions are evidence-driven, responsibilities are clear, and trade-offs between continuity and freshness are weighed against objective fitness and tactical indicators. In short, Deschamps' best path to 2026 is a careful balance. Keep the backbone of experience that wins trophies while methodically integrating younger players to add energy and versatility. The trade-offs are clear. Sticking with veteran continuity preserves cohesion and game management but risks physical decline and predictability. A rapid youth overhaul injects dynamism and future-proofing but brings inexperience and temporary chemistry loss. The most likely effective scenario is phased integration, tighter rotation to protect fitness, and tactical tweaks that preserve defensive solidity while allowing quicker transitions and more creative midfield freedom. You've seen how leadership, squad depth, tactical flexibility, and injury management all matter more than any single star performance. That's where Deschamps' experience gives France an edge, not by guessing miracles, but by weighing those trade-offs and choosing consistency with smart evolution. If this analysis resonated, like and subscribe for more tactical breakdowns and roster updates. Tell us in the comments which approach you prefer, continuity or youth, and why.